Yeah, that would, right, yeah. right.
The regular meeting of the Mishawaka Common Council for Monday, December 6, 2021 will
Sorry.
please come to order. That's okay.
I don't know where I went on vacation.
Good evening to those of you who are in attendance with us, if you would. Since I heard some tinkling in the background just a minute ago, please check your cell phones to make sure that they are on vibrate or silenced. For those of you who are participating remotely, we will once again be asking members of the public to place their microphone on mute during the meeting with the exception of any public hearing. At the appropriate point in the public hearing, I will invite the public to unmute their microphone for purposes of submitting such comments as they wish to make, one person at a time. All persons wishing to make public comments will be asked to first state their name and address for the record. And after completing the comment, members of the public will once again be asked to place their microphone on mute. And we thank all of you, whether you are here in person or remotely, for your cooperation. With that, please join us in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. DeMate.
Here.
Mr. Benicki.
Here.
Mr. Hazen.
Here.
Mr. Mamalenti.
Here.
Mr. Emmons.
Here.
Mr. Belovich.
Here.
Mr. Compton. Mrs. Volker.
Here.
Mr. Behixenbaugh.
Here. Approval of the minutes of our regular meeting of November 15th, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, then the minutes will stand approved as received from the clerk's office. Petitions, communications, remonstrance, and a memorial.
Yes, Mr. President, we have appeal number 2021-41 to the honorable members of the Common Council, City of Mishawaka, and the Board of Zoning Appeals. This is a use variance to allow microblading services in existing salon at 420 West Cleveland Road, the Tribe Salon. This is signed by Beth Clark. Appeal number 2021-42 to the Board of Zoning Appeals in the Mishawaka Common Council. This is a use variance to allow outdoor storage containers screened by a 7-foot fencing in a C2 commercial district, 2572 Miracle Lane, Dunham Sports. This is signed by John Becker, manager of Town and Country. Petition number 2021-18 to the honorable members of the Common Council, City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is a petition for PUD amendment to allow continued single-family residential use with new 3,072 square foot, 20-foot high accessory building at 230 Ireland Road. This petition is signed by William Sinkovitz. Petition number 2021-19 to the honorable members of the Common Council, City of Mishawaka. This is a petition for PUD amendment to amend to allow storage facility at 512 West Cleveland Road. This is signed by Wei Zhang. Petition number 2021-20 to the honorable members of the Common Council, City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is a petition for PUD amendment to add 2 single-family homes at the village at Harris Creek. This is signed by Nur Davison. Petition number 2021-21 to the honorable members of the Common Council, City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is to rezone from R1 SF residential to R3 residential for 8 residential homes and accessory buildings at the northeast corner of East Jefferson Boulevard and Maplehurst Avenue. This is Mishawaka Trooptown. This petition is signed by Dwayne Kent, VFW Post 360.
Thank you. This evening, we have no report of any special committee, so we'll move into ordinances on first reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-41, an ordinance declaring an emergency and determining the expenditure of additional funds for the year ending December 31st, 2021. This is additional funds in local road and street and the MVH restricted in the amount of $1 million.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-41 will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-42, an ordinance declaring an emergency and transferring and reappropriating funds within the budget adopted for the calendar year ending December 31st, 2021. This is a transfer from the General Fund, Public Safety Lit Fund, and the Cumulative Capital Development Fund in the amount of $276,000.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-42 will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-43, an ordinance declaring an emergency and determining the expenditure of additional funds for the year ending December 31st, 2021. This is in the amount of $650,000. An amendment has been requested.
Thank you. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to delete proposed ordinance number 2021-43 in its entirety and instead replace it with an amended ordinance as received by the council from the clerk's office.
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to delete proposed ordinance number 2021-43 in its entirety and instead substitute in an amended ordinance as received by the council from the clerk's office. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying, everybody's here in person. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And with that, proposed ordinance number 2021-43 as amended will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-44. An ordinance amending ordinance 5712, the fixing of the salaries of all employees of the city of Mishawaka except the Mishawaka Park Department, elected officials, and the Mishawaka Utilities for the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, for the year beginning January 1st, 2021. An amendment has been requested for this as well.
Thank you. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to delete proposed ordinance number 2021-44 in its entirety and instead replace it with an amended ordinance as has been received by the council from the clerk's office.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to delete proposed ordinance number 2021-44 in its entirety and instead replace it with an amended ordinance as received by the council. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, proposed ordinance number 2021-44 will be assigned to the Budget and Finance Committee. Resolutions.
Resolution R 2021-29, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, adding parcels to the city's property acquisition list associated with a previously approved Common Council Resolution 2014-07, which approved an order of the City of Mishawaka Plan Commission approving a certain declaratory resolution and amendment to the boundaries of the Northwest Area Improvement Project, consolidation of the South Side Economic Development Area, and the Northwest Improvement Project into one consolidated area improvement project, and an amendment to the Economic Development Plan for the Consolidated Area Improvement Project adopted by the City of Mishawaka Redevelopment Commission. This is adding property to the city's acquisition list.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing on proposed resolution 2021-29. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Good evening, Mr. Prince.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of council, Ken Prince, City Planner. The two properties that we are requesting adding to the acquisition list, the first one is 17.03 acres that's immediately north of the Judy Creek Water Treatment Facility that's under construction. This is a Veterans Parkway, the road that's been built north of Douglas Road that currently ends just north of the creek. This is property that is immediately north of that. When we purchased the property originally from the Penns, we purchased the property for basically adding or reconfiguring 3 holes of the Judy Creek Golf Course. Because the bids for that came in high, we then ended up purchasing the holes that we were originally planning to configure left us with this property. About 4 years ago, we responded to a request for proposals from the Convention and Visitors Bureau that identified this site as a potential location for a regional recreation facility. This site was ultimately chosen, and the developer that was chosen as part of that process, Cardin Associates, we've been working with some diligence to try to put together a proposal that works financially, that would have a large regional impact in terms of bringing money from outside the area in the terms of traveling sports leagues into this community. So this 17.303 acres essentially squares up that property with the extension of Veterans Parkway and is the next logical step in the process to get this facility off the ground. This is only one step, and as I noted in the staff report, or the email that was forwarded to you, the next step would likely, that would be before the council, would likely be regarding the financing. So the development, obviously it's heavily subsidized not only by the hotel motel tax, but they're looking for essentially the property taxes that would be paid to be reinvested to pay for the bonds for the facility, essentially creating a separate TIF out of this area that's currently located in the TIF. And we think that's appropriate relative to the long-term funding, but that's a discussion for another day. Right now, we're just asking for this property to be added to the acquisition list so then we can proceed in putting together the scope with the developer. The next property we're looking to add is 1307 Liberty Drive. This is just immediately north of Jefferson, across the street from the cemetery. We had previously bought the old used car lot that was on the corner and had cleaned that property. There were then two houses located immediately north of it. The one that was closest to the car lot is in reasonably good condition. The one north of that is not so good condition, and in this case, the property owner contacted us and asked us if we would have an interest. The purchase price is $45,000, and at that price, we thought it was worthwhile for the city to acquire it with a long-term ambition. If the property in between them comes for sale, it will create a nice redevelopment lot on that corner. We have had no contact with the property owner of the good house in between, and have no desire to contact them, but when they would go to sell, we would look to have that discussion at that point in time. Otherwise, this is just a long-term hold for the ultimate redevelopment. And really, if you look at it, those properties are too close to the road. I believe one has actually been hit by a car in the past. So we think it's appropriate to add to the acquisition list at this time. I'm happy to answer any question on either project that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Prince? Mr. Mamalenti?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Prince. Just quickly, how soon would we take possession of that home if everything passes?
So it's currently, I believe the people that are residing in it aren't the owners, but are relatives of the owners, and I think they want to wait until after the holidays before any closing would
So
take.
fairly short term.
To my knowledge, it would be a month or two after the holidays. But we never know in terms of these personal situations of how long that would continue. But definitely, this is not an extended hold. We're just looking for them to vacate in a reasonable fashion, and then we would take possession.
And then at that point, sometime in the near future, clear the lot.
Right, so with every home, I'd love to say we can take them down immediately, and, but there's an environmental that is done, and then if there's asbestos or other issues that we have to deal with, it could be an underground oil tank or the like for home heating that was there that we would have to deal with. We deal with those issues, then we typically allow public safety to train in them, and then we would take it down.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Volker?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a question about the 17 acres.
Yes.
If the sports complex does not happen, what would the city do with that property?
So first, the developer, or not the developer, the current property owner has asked, they're selling it to us at a reduced price. So the 17.03 acres is significantly below the appraised value of the property. The total would be a little over $350,000 for the 17 acres. And so what they've asked for is basically, we would give them the ability, if it does not move forward, the ability to buy that property back at what we paid for it.
Okay.
So we don't have any long-term plans to be a developer here. This is solely for the recreation facility if it were to go.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Prince? Well, just to piggyback on Mrs. Volker, and first of all, thank you for your work on this. Both of these make sense. I thought that the Liberty Drive property was pretty close to the street when I was a kid running around in the backyard and the side yard of that property. But I had somewhat of a similar question as Mrs. Volker with regard to the Penn Farm buy-sell. To follow up on your dialogue with her, And I appreciated the timeline that was built into the buy-sell agreement. That gave me some better idea of what we're looking at here. And as I understand it, if all goes according to the proposed schedule, it could be winter of 2022 on into 2023 before the sports complex is actually developed. Did I read that the right way?
That's correct. I can go in more detail if you'd like me to, but
Certainly if you want to, but my question was going to be, to follow up on Mrs. Volker's question, we talked about the property, and this is a somewhat unrelated but yet related issue. As I understand the time frame, Veterans Parkway itself would be constructed prior to that. So in a similar vein, could you help, further flesh out what the communal good is to the construction of Veterans Parkway if the sports complex isn't developed?
yes, so so first I'll talk about timeframes. So right now, the city has entered into a contract with Lawson Fisher and Associates for designing the next phase of Veterans Parkway. That will extend it. The exhibit that was provided to you, there was a blue area that included a roundabout. And that roundabout would serve the athletic facility. And as part of that project is also a sanitary sewer lift station that actually serves that entire area. So the benefit of the public project, even if the athletic facility doesn't go, it opens up close to 200 acres for economic development for the city. So if the sports complex doesn't go, this is very similar to what we did at Edison Lakes in terms of building the roads and infrastructure that allows for that future development. We really, when you look at the city, and I've said this on many occasions, we have very limited room. We don't have any ability to grow to the north. It's already completely developed toward Granger. The south is limited. Our real growth area is northeast. At least the most practical growth area is northeast. And this is just a natural extension of that. So when you look at Beacon Parkway and where this area is on the Penn property and to the north is probably our immediate growth area. We consume roughly 25 new acres a year when you look at the long-term projection of how we consume growth and grow. Yeah, we'll have annexations of 100 acres at a time. But ultimately, when you look at the property that's being developed, it's only about 25 acres a year that we actually grow and develop. The rest is kind of infill development. I'd point at Edison Lakes was originally developed in the 1980s and has grown over time. But that's how things, you have to have available land to have development. You can't just have one property and say, why don't you push that person there? People have to have multiple opportunities in multiple areas in order to provide for the growth of the city. This is one of those areas that we're providing for the growth of the city long term. And Veterans Parkway, just so you know, this is not a residential street. This is not a service street. This is a collector road that you wouldn't typically put a burden on the developer to do. This is not a residential subdivision. This is a collector road that's intended to handle a lot of traffic.
So to summarize, and tell me if this is inaccurate, this investment in the acquisition of property coupled with the investment in the roadway and the related infrastructure sets the stage for further development in that area, both in terms of the athletic complex and then anything else that might be suitable for that area if need be.
That's correct. And the athletic complex, where we essentially have roughly 50 acres outlined for it now, which would also include an outdoor component. So when you look at that 200 acres, that leaves 150 acres for long-term future growth of the city.
And with regard to the athletic complex, that clearly has been a work in progress for many years, and it has some fair amount of complexity associated with it. So
Yes,
in and
it
of
does.
itself, it shouldn't cause us any concern that we haven't seen a shovel go into the ground for the athletic complexes.
No, not at all. And to give you an idea, we've progressively worked on it. So at the end of last year, even despite COVID, the developer was opening a facility in Pendleton, and we went down and visited that facility. And at that time, that's when the discussion of hockey came up and adding ice to the facility. So literally, at that point in time, the Convention and Visitors Bureau did an additional feasibility study for ice that we're still working on to this day. I mean, the feasibility study identified the need for the ice, but if you can imagine, the ice community in this region is a small community. So in terms of talking to the folks at the ice box, talking to Notre Dame, if additional sheets of ice are actually constructed, they have to mesh. When you talk about tournaments, you have to reserve not just the 2 sheets that we built at this facility, but the other 4 sheets of ice between Compton and the ice box all have to be incorporated together. So there's been extensive discussions on how that might work. In addition to that, we walked through a little bit of the fiscal. So the developer, in looking at the numbers that they can generate from the facility, looking at what the taxes would be on a taxable facility, and then looking at essentially the funding that's coming from hotel motel, and that's a little bit of a crapshoot only because of the COVID year. And so we all had to make an estimation, and then Baker Tilly put together the numbers. And so we know, at a minimum, it's the facility that can be built here is well over $30 million. The issue is that when you get and you put sheets of ice there, that number gets closer to $40 million. And if you do outside components there, that gets closer to $50 million in terms of the cost of the construction of the facility. So as part of our due diligence this past year, we applied for the READY grant as part of that process. We are hopeful that if this region is awarded funds, that some of those funds will enable us in terms of scope to add that scope into this facility. Mayor Wood has been very adamant. We have one shot at this to build the largest facility that we can reasonably afford, because we won't have another shot, a turn on the barrel, if you will, in terms of generating a facility that's going to draw people into the community. So we're hopeful that, one, the region will receive those READY funds, and secondly, we'll be able to apply and receive them. We won't get an answer to that until about June, which is why we identified the end of next year as when the facility would be potentially constructed, or started constructed. Then it would be a year after that before it
Okay,
would be
thank you.
operational.
And one final clarification with regard to the acquisition of both of these pieces of property that are subject of this resolution, as well as the infrastructure improvements that we talked about up north. TIF is the funding source for both the acquisition and the improvements, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So it's not coming out of the general fund, it's coming out of that fund that's dedicated to these type of economic development incentive projects.
That is correct.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Prince? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else physically present who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed resolution? If you would, please come forward. Seeing no one, is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed resolution? Is there anyone physically present who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed resolution? Please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed resolution? Are there any council members who wish to speak? If not, then I call for the question. Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
The resolution passes 8-0.
Thank you. This evening, we have no ordinances on second reading, so we will move into privilege of the floor. At this time, members of the public are invited to the podium to speak with respect to non-agenda items only under privilege of the floor. Seeing no one, we will extend a similar invitation to those participating remotely. Is there anyone who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor? All right, thank you. With that, we'll move into unfinished business, of which there is none, then new business. At this point, the chair would entertain a motion to amend the agenda by adding an action item under new business to reflect the council's appointment to the School City of Mishawaka Board of School Trustees for a term commencing on January 1st, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to amend the agenda by adding an action item under new business related to the council's appointment to the Board of School Trustees for School City of Mishawaka for a term commencing January 1st, 2022. Any additional questions or comments from the council? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. With that, the chair would now entertain a motion with regard to the appointment of an individual to serve the term on the school board commencing on January 1st, 2022.
Mr. President,
Mr. Emmons.
I'd like to nominate Amanda Roberts to the School City of Mishawaka School Board of Trustees for a term of 4 years, beginning January 1, 2022.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to appoint Amanda Roberts to another term as our representative on the School City of Mishawaka Board of School Trustees commencing January 1st, 2022. Are there any additional questions or comments from the council? Then let me add our thanks to Mrs. Roberts for her service to the community and to the school board. And if there is nothing else to add, then I will call for the question.
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 Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
The appointment passes 8-0.
Thank you. Is there any other new business to come before the council? Mr. Mamalenti?
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to wait till after the vote results before I made a comment to Ms. Roberts, but I just wanted to say an extreme thanks for all the hard work and efforts that you've done in the last 4 years. You know, it's been extremely trying and exhausting, and some items have been thrown your way that nobody could have expected with COVID, and all the efforts that you and your colleagues on the school board and the administration have done. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate the efforts for the next 4 years as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mamalenti. Mrs. DeMade?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to mention that the West End Neighborhood Watch will be holding its monthly meeting next Tuesday, not tomorrow, but next Tuesday, December 14th, 7 p.m. at St. Bevo's. This month, we'll have Julie Toby, the training manager from the St. Joe County 911 Center, and she will be discussing how the county dispatch works with the Mishawaka PD and to meet the needs of all Mishawakans. Parking is directly behind the church in the very large parking lot, and all are welcome. You don't need to be a member of the West End to join us. All are welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Emmons?
Yeah, just clarification. Did you say 7 o'clock or
7
6?
o'clock.
7 o'clock. Okay.
Do you want to ask
you.
about the refreshments, Mr. Emmons?
No, I know she's going to have West End Bakery, but she can't because it's closed.
That's right, that's right.
All right, excellent.
And I don't think we want week-old donuts.
Oh, well,
We shall see what occurs. Mr. Mamalenti?
Thank you again, Mr. President. Just a brief reminder that the neighborhood watch for Twin Branch area it will be off this month of December, and we will start up on January. For that meeting, we will also go remote as well for the 911 dispatch center tour, and that will be at 7 o'clock on January 19th. We can meet there in the lobby, and we will start our tour shortly after 7 p.m. I would also like to take this time to give a special thanks to Judge Chickowitz for his outstanding accommodations and efforts that he held for our meeting last month, or this past month, at the JJC. He and his staff did an amazing job, and it's such an impressive facility and operation that they hold. So thanks to Judge Chickowitz and his staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mamalenti. Mr. Emmons?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to note that our neighborhood meeting at St. Bevo's will begin again in January. The next meeting will be on January 20th at 7 o'clock. And later on, we'll be announcing what the speaker will be on January 20th. Again, at that meeting, we'll have West End Bakery donuts and treats and that. So we'll look forward to seeing everybody there on the 20th. And so hope everybody has a very Merry Christmas and a good New Year's. And then we'll see you on the 20th. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons. Other new business? Then, along the lines of calendar issues, although we have another meeting yet in December, for those of frequent attendees and frequent viewers, you will want to adjust your calendar for January because pursuant to our regular council rules, our first meeting in January will not take place on Monday the 3rd, but rather Tuesday, January 4th, since City Hall is closed on the 3rd for the holiday. So please adjust your calendars accordingly, and we look forward to seeing you then. Is there any other new business to come before the council? And then hearing none, a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.